All right, here we are in another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Hey, Peter.
Morning, Bill.
How is everything?
Not bad. We have a nice weather up here. How's your weather?
I haven't been outside in a few days. I'm not sure.
You can go outside, you know.
I know. I've just been busy working.
No,
We're on
don't
episode.
work too. Mr. Hawthorne, you take some breaks and get some fresh air.
Yeah,
Now.
I'm supposed to be on vacation.
I don't want to hear you overworking yourself.
Yeah, my working vacation. Episode number 279, Peter. 279. The name of this episode is Creative Real Estate Deals, Guaranteed Lawsuit Protection to Totally Reduce Risk.
Lawsuit. That's a nice word.
Here's the description. Worried you might make a creative real estate mistake and get sued? Even worse, get you rather than the house. Grabbing or trying to grab all of your assets to satisfy the lawsuit in addition to the loan owed.
Yeah.
Totally killing your future as you need or want it to be. Maybe killing you mentally. I've had a lot of coaching clients, not a lot. I've had several coaching clients that it kills them mentally. They're like, oh, I had to take a couple of years off. I couldn't handle it because they had a bad deal. If this type of thinking is lurking around in your mind, don't worry. This unique podcast is going to open your mind and income with legal and doable solutions so you will never, ever have to worry about being sued.
Good one.
In fact, what we are about to reveal to you is one of the most obvious secrets in real estate. And once you understand it, after today, you will be light years ahead of 99% of all real estate people on planet Earth.
And it's a secret, right?
It's not a secret. We'll go over it.
Okay.
Why would I say this? Because the real money guys who do this don't want you to know about it. They feel it will kill their business and personal income. More to the point, their lifestyles. But after today, you will be in the know and soon be one of them creating true wealth.
Okay, I'm in.
Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is in your for stuff that I give away and all kinds of special stuff. For this podcast, it is a very specific link for what we're going to talk about. It's going to show you how to get the documents and learn how to do this.
Yep.
Okay. It's not a very hard education, but you got to have some education. Okay.
Yeah.
So make sure you go on the link. Also, normally we record this on Thursday mornings at 9:30 a.m. So you can go on YouTube or Facebook and you can put comments in there. Although we have, when I'm away right now, we're doing some pre-recorded stuff. So just put comments in there and we'll find them anyways. Okay.
Just have to wait for your answer.
Yeah. And if you need any help, you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. There's stuff on there like a free stuff page that's got 26 plus documents and videos and all that stuff on there. And there's also a top right-hand side, there's a support link there. All those support tickets come right to me personally, so I'll answer your questions. Okay?
Alrighty.
Here we go, Peter.
Go for it, Mr. Hawthorne.
John D. Rockefeller once stated, the best asset protection in the world is to own nothing but control everything. His son, Nelson Rockefeller, carried this message to the common folk after John D. died. So I've always referred to it as, what Nelson Rockefeller said. Well, he actually got it from his dad. His dad stated that, I think, in 1901 or 1910 or something like that.
Way back.
More important, how do you actually do this activity and legally like the Rockefellers did with real estate? How do you do that? Today's podcast is one you should consider a historical mark in your life. Because what we're about to cover can and will change the outcome of your legacy or your life or your way you live and your family's future. What am I alluding to? Do I have you in suspense yet? I hope so. I'm talking about land trusts.
Oh.
This device, the land trust, has been around since the Roman times that I know about. Actually, it was King Arthur the what is it, the third or the fifth or whatever he was?
I only knew one, so I don't know.
Which one was he?
Well, I didn't know there was more than one. There was
Oh.
King Henry 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. King Arthur, I just remember the one.
That's
from
who it is, King Henry. I'm saying it wrong.
Henry.
Henry, yeah.
Yeah, well, Henry,
That's what-
the eighth one in the song. The
Yeah,
fifth
so that's the
one.
one. Yeah, that's the one right there.
Okay.
It actually goes back as far as him too.
Wow.
But listen to this, Peter. You ready?
Yeah.
Here's a little story. Property trusts. Now, I want to clear this up in a minute, but property trusts became popular in the early 1900s
Okay.
with some city aldermen, which is a government official. They're like town council people.
Yeah.
They wanted to build skyscrapers in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
But because they were the aldermen, they knew that the public would not let them vote on the zoning laws and all the things that they needed to pass if they owned the buildings.
Slight conflict of interest.
Right. And the public would automatically, like, so even back then, you match a politician up with like something like that, and you just know that it's not going to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's going to be slanted to the politician making money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, of course, they figured out a way to do it. Right. So what they did was they put these skyscrapers. Actually, it was land before they built the skyscrapers, but they put these properties in a land trust. Okay. So let me give you a definition of a land trust so you can see how clever this is.
Okay.
Okay. For simplicity, consider the land trust a method of taking title to the property, nothing more, nothing less.
Just the title, not the property, just the title.
Right.
But not the property.
Right.
It seems hard to divorce that in my mind, but legally there's a difference, the title to it and the property itself, right? Is that the point?
So just let's clear that up. So the definition of a title is like, so you have a title called dad, right?
Yeah.
So do you have responsibilities and certain actions you do when you're wearing the dad hat?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So like if you had the title of a policeman and you had the hat, you had like a policeman hat, when you're wearing that hat, you're being a policeman.
That's right.
And your title is policeman. So you have certain roles and duties.
Yep.
As a policeman. Same thing like with a fireman.
Yeah.
If you have the hat or the responsibility of a fireman, you have certain roles and certain duties, but your title is fireman. Right?
Sure.
So when you have title to a property, that means you have certain roles and responsibilities as the title holder.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the title as, we'll say, you hold title to the property. Right?
Yeah.
So that means you have the right to do what you have the right to make the decisions for all that property. That's your title, is you make all the decisions.
Okay.
Once you make those decisions, they're clarified in a document called the deed. So the proclamation or whatever you're proclaiming or you're stating is your decision is, like my decision is, I want Peter to be the trustee of my trust.
Mm-hmm.
Or my decision is, I want this property to be under this LLC.
Yeah.
So title is the decision maker. The deed is what the decision maker decided to do, and it's put on public record.
Mm-hmm.
So they know what that decision was. They know who owns it. They know all that stuff. So when you do a title search, right,
Yeah.
there's a chain of title. In other words, over the 100 years, maybe 4 people own the property. Right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So what a title search does is it goes back and it says, while you were in charge of this property making decisions, you forgot, your attorney forgot to put on there on the deed an easement. We'll say,
Mm-hmm.
permission to have somebody have a corner of their house be on your land. That's an easement.
Mm-hmm.
So that easement wasn't put on there. So now it's 10 years later, you got to go fix that.
Yeah.
Because you made a mistake while you were in charge of it. So title insurance is the insurance of fixing that if it goes wrong 20 years from now.
And that you don't incur the expense. The insurance covers the expense, whatever it is.
Right. So if you forgot to do something, or your legal beagles or whatever didn't do something, and while you were captain of the ship, you have insurance to go fix it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why they do it's kind of scumbaggish if you think about it, but it's an insurance company. So there you go. Right. So they do a title search before they insure you, because if there's a problem, they won't insure you, because why would they want to have the expense of going to fix it when it's a predetermined problem?
Sure. It's like health insurance, pre-existing condition.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So they go do a title search to see if it looks normal. So they're playing their odds. So most of the title insurance money they get is profit, because they don't have a lot of claims, because they pre-inspect the title history before they insure it.
But that also helps you not buy something if there's problems with the title, so you get warned in advance. So it still goes back to the original owner to fix, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Or, for me, what happens is I love those problems, because when I have a title problem, I can get cheaper prices and then go fix it 99% of the time.
Yes, sir. We
so
did that one.
So now think of this. You might have heard this statement: is the property insurable?
Yes.
Right. So that's one of the definitions of
it. Definitions of like,
is the property insurable? Can you get title insurance?
Yeah. Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah. The only question I had before was, having title does not mean you're the actual owner, because
I'm going to cover that next. So see, there's only, and I'm going to make sure you get that. So there's only 4 entities that can own a house or any real estate. Only 4 entities can only, and these are title holders.
Yes.
Right. So it could be you as a person.
Mm-hmm.
That's an entity.
Mm-hmm.
It could be some sort of like an LLC, an S corporation, a C corporation, business type thing.
Yeah.
That's number 2. Number 3, it could be a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And number 4, it could be a trust. Which brings me back to the definition of a trust: is consider the land trust a method of taking title to the property. Nothing more, nothing less. Right?
Yep.
This trust is an agreement between the officer of the trust, called the trustee, and the person who really controls the property.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it like this: you have a legal owner of a business, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a manager who runs the business.
Right.
So the owner of the business in a trust is called the beneficiary, and the manager is called the trustee. Okay. Now, I want to clarify something here, because trusts are very misunderstood. And if you go to an attorney and say, I want to put my house in a trust, and they start asking you for social security numbers and income and all that kind of stuff, it's the wrong type of trust.
Mm.
The exact language you need to use is a property trust, because the only reason for a property trust is to put title into it, and that's it. Put the trust name. We use the street name, 123 Main Street Trust.
Mm.
We form our trust without any legal advice. I have a document that's called a deed of trust.
Yep.
Right? It's actually called a warranty deed of trust.
Right.
And when you warranty a deed, that means that you have nothing attached to that deed. That means the mortgages are paid. That means the liens are paid. That means all of that.
Yeah.
Right. So what happens is the deed of trust does multiple things. A warranty deed of trust does multiple things. They're two different documents. Mm-hmm. So a warranty deed of trust means, one, you're warranting that there's no liens on this property and you're not dragging them across. Number one, the warranty part. The deed part, the warranty deed, the deed part means you're changing ownership of the property. Mm-hmm. On public record. And the trust part means that the entity that owns it is a trust. And it's just holding the title and the deed.
Right.
Okay. Now, think of this as the best way to think of this is like estate planning for a property. Mm-hmm. Not all of your assets go in this trust, just the property go in it.
Yeah.
Okay. So if the owner of the property dies, right, suppose you have a property in your name, Peter, and it says Peter. It says the deed says Peter Coca-Cola owns his property.
Right.
And you die.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Who's going to sign that deed to the new owner? You're dead.
Yeah. Can't.
So the only way you can do that, there's only two ways that you can do that. One is you go to probate court, and that's the whole reason for probate court is the owner is dead and can't sign the deed.
Right.
Also, probate court allows you to, if you have $1 million plus this house, you're going to go to probate court, and it's going to say, okay, the $1 million goes to your 3 kids or 2 kids. And your 3 grandkids, the money is a different portion of it. But the house, they're going to produce a probate deed for your person that's running your affairs to be able to sign it and change ownership of the house or the property, the real estate. Right?
Yeah.
Now, in a trust, what happens is you own it, you're the beneficiary, right?
Right.
You're saying, Bill, I trust you. So what I'm going to do is give you all the rights to sign this property over or take loans or sign any legal documents at all because I trust you. Mm. Now, while you're alive, you're going to give me instructions on what to do. Mm-hmm. If you were to pass away, then we have a document called the Declaration of Trust. And it's the rules and regulations of the trust. It's what you do, what I do, what lawyers do, whatever. It's got all the rules. It's a 3-page or a 5-page legal document that explains all the scenarios that could happen while the house is in the trust.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if we can do this. I feel like I'm talking too much. So is there something? Are you okay? Are you following with me?
Well, just to go back to the very beginning, you were saying that you're not liable personally when you do this. So that's why I was asking the question about owner, because from what I understand, working with you, the trust is the owner or the beneficiary or both. Who's the owner that could be liable but really isn't because it's a trust? Is it the trust that's the owner?
Right.
Okay. And I understand you can't sue a trust.
Okay, so I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah,
I need to explain the trust before I can tell you how it protects you.
Yeah, but for now, you're not the owner if you hold title.
Right. So
Title and owner is two different
let me
things.
clear it up for you right now. So if you have a property that's owned by a LLC, who's the owner?
The LLC.
Okay, good. So how is the LLC run?
Somebody owns the LLC.
So there's shareholders that control or make the decision, right?
Yes.
That's exactly the way a trust is.
Right. Good.
So it's just like an LLC. It's an entity. It's considered an entity, and it has managers and owners and decision makers and executors.
Yeah.
A trust is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The difference is, I'm going to explain to you why you would use a trust and not an LLC, because I have this conversation with my attorney all the time.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. Yeah.
Okay, so
one other question. You said land trust and property trust. Is that the same thing, or is it two different things? One for land, one for property.
No, it's the same thing.
Same thing. Good. I know sometimes terminology, state to state, or it's the same thing. So it's the same thing, land or property.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just me. It's me not paying attention to my notes. It's a property trust.
And you could say land trust too.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, because if we hear either one, we know it's the same thing. Because any one of us could see something, hear something, read something, and we'll see the other term, but it's the same. Good.
Right.
Okay.
So the trustee allows the trust allows the manager or the trustee to sign deeds and manage the affairs of the property.
Mm-hmm.
Those affairs are guided by the beneficiary.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he's dead or alive, or she's dead or alive. So savvy property owners use these powerful land trust or property trust documents to get personal and legal advantages not associated with any other kind of property ownership.
Mm.
Let me say that again. To get personal and legal advantages not associated with other kinds of property ownership, which brings me to the number one reason most real estate land trusts are used.
Yeah.
Secrecy.
Mm.
Nobody knows you're the beneficiary except you, the trustee, and the closing agent you use to form it.
Mm.
So that declaration of trust, which is the rules and regulations and all of that stuff in a trust, is in your filing cabinet. It's signed and notarized and in your filing cabinet, but it's not put on public record.
Yeah.
What's put on public record is the deed of trust, which puts the property in a trust and changes ownership together. So there's a deed that gets filed and it says that seller is selling to buyer, trustee.
Yeah.
So if I was the seller and you were buying from me, the deed would say Bill Hawthorne is selling this property to Pete Coca-Cola, the trustee of trust number 123 Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, not the owner.
Doesn't say who the owner is.
No, and the trustee is not the owner, because you started this with like liability, and you're not liable because you're the trustee. Because I've been trustee for you for certain things, and I'm not liable for it.
You're a trustee of properties you don't even know you're a trustee of because I haven't told you yet.
That's nice. Don't I have to like sign something?
No, that's the glory of it, right? So
I'm rich.
Yeah.
So
this is not part of the podcast I had written down, but you bring up some good questions. So let's just talk about them. So the trustee, first of all, the trustee is not legally bound to his decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you sign a loan document saying that the trust is going to pay it and it doesn't pay it, you're not legally bound because you were acting as trustee.
Yeah.
Okay. Which, by the way, that's why the beneficiary has to make sure that they're letting the trustee, the word is very appropriately used. It's like, I have to trust you that you're not going to go get a loan, right? Because I mean, think about it. People listening to this podcast, they'll think that, well, that means somebody could steal my equity, go get a loan for $100,000, and then the trust is like stuck with that $100,000. And that's just somebody being a dumbass. That's just somebody in their own head talking shit because they've never done it before. And those comments irritate me because they don't know what's really going on. I mean, if you were to go get a loan from a bank or sign loan documents, first of all, you have to show financials. Second of all, the bank is not stupid. They're going to want to see who owns the trust. What are the roles in the trust? Third of all, even if you did get past all that, the check for the mortgage is going to come in the trust's name. So the trustee can't go to the bank and say, oh, this is for me, put it in my personal account. It's because they haven't done it. But the point is that the beneficiary has to trust the trustee. Okay. Now, what happens is so the liability is transparent. Also, the taxes. So because you're a trustee doesn't mean you put this trust, like you don't put any of my properties as trustee on your taxes because you're just a trustee. It's like, you know, you work for a guy down the street that has an auto repair shop.
Yeah.
And you're the manager of the auto repair shop. You're not going to file your taxes on how much money you made that guy, the owner. You're just going to say, well, this is how much money I got paid. I got paid $80,000 a year to be his manager. Well, what I do in my trust is I don't pay my trustees. They're usually my friends, and they don't really do anything except once in a while show up and sign documents.
Yep.
Right? So I don't pay them anything, so they're not getting anything from it, so they don't have to claim anything on their taxes because they're not getting anything from it. So the taxes are all transparent. And the government, because that's why I'm telling you this is the biggest secret in real estate, because all the right people that need to know this know it, like the IRS. And I'm gonna tell you from my heart, as profound as I could be, I can't state this strongly enough. If you don't understand what I'm teaching you right now and you don't believe me, you will get screwed. 99.9% of all attorneys do not understand this method. I absolutely, every single time I get a new attorney, I got to train him on trusts. And the way I do it is I just give him my trust documents. I give him the deed of trust and I give him the declaration and tell them to read it. And one for one, they always come back and say, that's pretty clever, Bill. How'd you learn that? Right? We started the show off by saying all politicians do this. How do you think politicians have so much money?
Yeah, well, they're in the position to make the laws to suit them. That's the whole point. The laws are made to suit somebody, and if you're a politician, you make it to suit yourself for the properties.
Right.
So you can bitch about them, or you can join them and be the good guy and take an advantage, not in a bad way, but like have the good guy have some success here. Why not?
So, because I think we're going to have enough time to talk about this, when I wrote this, I didn't think we were going to. Let's just finish what I wrote, and then I'm going to come back to this politician point.
Okay.
Okay. So, remember early, So unless you're a close personal friend, you don't know who owns this property. Only the trustee, the closing agent, and the beneficiary know who the trustee, who owns the property, right? Remember earlier we spoke about the land trust documents and how they're run, the declaration. This document is not filed, right, on public record.
Yep.
They say they stay in your filing cabinet. Only you know about it unless you share them. Right?
Yeah.
So to your question earlier, so how do these trusts protect you from lawsuits? Right? It's not foolproof. It's not foolproof on what I'm telling you from getting sued. So in other words, somebody could, if somebody squealed on, if you told your son that you were in a trust with me, you were the trustee of one of my trusts, and you explained it to him, and then let's say your son bought a property for me and he wanted to sue me and he knew that I was the beneficial interest, he could tell a lawyer that, and then a lawyer could go find that or figure that out. And in through court, they can demand through subpoenas and stuff like that, my trust documents.
Right.
But they would have to know that I was the beneficiary. Somebody would have to tell them that, because there's no paper trail anywhere.
Sure.
Publicly.
And they have no right to force you necessarily.
Right. So what they would sue is they would sue my beneficial interest. Okay. So that's what they're going to sue. But they have to know who the beneficiary is first, and that has to be total by hearsay. Because it's hidden. Right? So it's not foolproof that you can't get sued. It's just very hard. And this is the reason why I argue with my attorney. Like, why wouldn't I want to have an LLC? Because the LLC has on record who the owners are. And it's too easy for a good attorney to go do their research. I mean, Peter, we did multiple podcasts on finding sellers, right?
Yeah.
So what we do is we go onto this software called PropStream, and we download a list out of area owners that have 30% worth of equity. We download that list on PropStream for whatever zip code. We then take that list and we upload it to a website called batchskip.io or something like that. And for 15 cents a lead, we can skip trace the owners of those houses. And then we can get their phone number, their email address, and their mailing address, and we can market to them. So if I could do that for 15 cents a name, what do you think the attorney could do?
30 cents.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, once they get my name, they can find me.
Yeah.
Right?
Because the shareholders are listed on the LLC.
So exactly right. So if my name is on an LLC and they go to the resolution documents for an LLC that are listed with the state, now they can take my name and they can go search. Now here's the dangerous part about having LLCs is I own 3 of them. Right? So now they could take the liability or this lawsuit outside of that LLC and go after my personal assets because they know I have more.
Yep.
My attorney doesn't seem to understand this. He says that it's, there's rules and there's laws about suing somebody in an LLC. But bottom line is I'd rather have the extra protection of being hidden, so I put it in a trust, right? Now, listen to what I'm about to tell you.
Yeah.
What I have done, just as an extra layer of protection, is the beneficiary I make my LLC. So you have a trustee and a beneficiary. So I make the beneficiary my LLC. So if somebody penetrates the actual trust, they then have to go penetrate the LLC. It's an extra step.
Interesting.
Right? And to be a little bit more complicated about it, if you get a lot of properties, what you could do is you can have an LLC that's the management company. Right? And then an LLC that owns the property.
Wow.
So I'm being very complex here, but you can have a trust, and then the LLC as the management LLC as the beneficiary, and then that management company doesn't own the deed; they just manage the property, and then have another LLC that owns the property.
So would that be the ultimate beneficiary?
No, the beneficiary would be the LLC that manages it. But if they go penetrate the management LLC, it's not the ownership of the deed. It's the manager. So they'd have to then penetrate that one, then find out, okay, so who is the owner? Oh, it's this LLC. So I don't do all that because I'd rather just be ethical and do my deals and not get sued.
Sure.
But I know there's thinker brains on here. That's just something for them it's a lot of work to do all of that. Right.
And a little more expense, each LLC.
Right. So now let's just take it one step further because we have time. So what I'm in the middle of doing right now is what we call a family trust. So that's where you got to have your social security number. It's like it's a business. It's not a land or a property trust. It just holds title to a property. It's all my businesses. So the land trust owns or will own my shares of the LLCs.
Mm-hmm.
So land trust. So if I have three entities, I have one with you, I have one with Sean, and I have one of my own.
Yep.
So I have shares in your LLC, and I have shares in Sean's LLC, and then I have shares in my LLC.
Sure.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those shares into the trust.
Mm.
Now, suppose I make $600,000 this year. Nice number, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that money, if the land trust owns those shares of those businesses, the money goes into the trust.
Right.
It's not taxable income until I take it out for myself.
Mm.
So I might have made $600,000, but I only need $100,000 to live. So I took $100,000 out. I pay taxes on 100, not on 600.
That's amazing. And who made these laws?
The politicians.
Ah, God bless them.
All right. So I went a little bit further than I should have there, but that's the power of trust. So more importantly, in our podcast here, what I'm saying is that you can buy a property, put it in a trust, and nobody knows who owns it.
Mm-hmm.
So because nobody knows who owns it, you have, in a sense, lawsuit protection. Because the owner's hidden, and unless you know someone, you will never know who it is. Now, subpoenaing you for the trust documents, yes.
Yeah.
But I could fire you as a trustee without even you knowing it.
Mm.
So just with the strike of a pen, I have a 1-paragraph document that says, Peter, you're no longer the trustee. Now Jesse is the trustee. So what I could do is I could say, okay, Peter, well, they're suing you. Give them this piece of paper saying that I fired you as a trustee 3 months ago. You have no rights.
Yeah.
Now watch this. I don't need to file on the deed who my new trustee is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a circle jerk, literally, right? But this is why it's lawsuit protection. You should not have transactions that come to this. You should not have transactions that come to this legal problem.
Right.
If you do, you did something wrong up until now.
Mm-hmm.
But just for the sake of the novice people, the people that have money, the people that are concerned about their life, this podcast is for them. These are things you could do. I don't do half of what I'm talking about because I'd rather just do a good ethical deal and do what's right and not have all the legal ramifications.
Sure. You know, it's not easy to get in trouble unless you pull it in or cause it. I mean, it could happen, but not, you know.
So a good thing to understand is we have good insurance. You know, like for example, all my houses not only have good, healthy renters insurance with high liability, but we have $1 to $2 million aggregate on top of that. So every policy I have not only has the liability insurance, but it's got $1 million or $2 million umbrella on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I do that just for what we're talking about because I want to have the insurance company pay for it.
Sure.
Right? Okay, so.
You know, it's interesting you go over stuff like this. You don't talk about this deep stuff, but it really just shows how much you've worked on this and learned over the years and like just the techniques. And you're really pretty smart.
Thanks.
I'm
Yeah, well,
serious.
it's because I do it. You know, these are all things that I've done, and I've been through some incidences where I've had trouble like this, so I had to change things.
Yeah, you learned this as you went. You didn't just sit down and study this for 5 years and then
Right.
start. You learned this as you went. And I mean, you created a lot of this. I'm not created, but you found it and you refined it, and even to the point that the lawyers will use it.
I finally figured out, Peter, to your point, I finally figured out why I'm different. Because first of all,
Your mother will be pleased to know, Bill.
Yeah. For a long time, I couldn't even have that. I was like, I'm just a regular guy. Why does everybody keep telling me I'm different or I'm smart? I used to have a problem with that. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I don't feel that way. I feel like just a dumbass kid. I'm a hillbilly. I mean, we had cows and pigs when I grew up, and I had to like feed them and like, I'm a total hillbilly, right? And I don't feel that way. I mean, I grew up my first 23 years of my life, I wore a t-shirt and a flannel shirt and jeans. I never wore shorts. You know what I mean? It was just not, you just don't do that. You know what I mean? I was growing up in the woods, right? So and I wasn't educated and all that stuff, and I've self-educated myself, obviously, but here's what makes me different. Because I finally had to come to the conclusion in my 40s, like, well, I guess I am different, And here it is. You ready? It comes down, and it took me a long time to figure this out. Learn from what is his name? Schultz is his last name. Eugene Schultz. I bought a $600 book on copywriting that was written in the 50s. Mm-hmm. And it was all about copywriting. And there's this whole section in there that completely altered my life. And it's most of us have an image of how we want other people to see us. Like I'm the fireman, right? So you want people to see you as a fireman. I'm a good father. You want people to see you as a, so when you get complicated, boy, Peter, you're a really good dad. It's vindicating to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's number one. Number two, once you pick that role, whatever, and it's done subconsciously most of the time. What I do that's different than most is not that, because a lot of people do, everybody does that. They have an image that they want to portray to everybody around them, right?
Sure, makes sense.
Once I do that, what I do is it's your management style of that role. And that's what's different. See, what I do is when I run my businesses, I only manage the things that go wrong. I only inspect or pay attention to the things. I don't pay attention to the things that go right. Now, I measure them with statistics, although I'm not as good with that lately as I had been. But suppose you got an employee that does 10 things. Their job is 10 things, has 10 tasks.
Yeah.
And they do 9 tasks correctly, and their statistics say they're in a good shape.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one thing they don't do correctly. That one thing is what I manage.
Yeah.
I let the policies and the hat write-ups, as I call them, or the job descriptions, do the rest.
Yeah, because you set it up in the first place to run. It's not like you just let it go. You set it up to be successful and to run correctly. And if it is, why would you bother? Why would you micromanage? You leave it alone.
That's right.
Okay, because you set it up in the first place.
So what I do is I look at what's not being done. So that's what's made me different is in my life, I don't think about the things that I have done and what I'm good at. I don't think about that. In my head, I'm always looking at the things that I do wrong. And I'm constantly beating myself up like, oh my God, I should have made that offer better. Or I should have more properties by now. Or I should have more coaching clients by now. I'm looking at those like, how can I fix those? Instead of like, I got a really good coaching group. Or like I've done hundreds of deals. I don't look at it that way.
What are you saying? You're not complacent?
I guess you can say that. I mean, I've never gone further than that in my head, but the difference between me and some of our listeners is I'm not worried about it. I have a lot of confidence in myself. My mother tells me I'm arrogant and pompous and all that, and it took me a while to come over that. Well, all that is confidence. I have confidence in myself. So if I screw something up, my saying in my mind is this too shall pass. I mean, think of all the catastrophes in your life. You managed to live through it, and that passed.
You're still here.
So like I told you before, I think in my head, what's the worst that can happen if I make that decision? And then you come to terms with it, then it doesn't bother you as much. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I go do stuff. I just go do it, and I manage what doesn't work. And most people don't have the balls to do that. Most people aren't stupid enough to do that. I'm stupid enough to go do stuff like that. That's why I say I'm a dumbass. That's a 70s show statement. You dumbass. Red says that. right?
Yeah.
And that's why but I stopped saying it because I was getting support tickets saying that I'm self-inflicting and I'm demeaning on myself, and they don't get it. What I'm saying is that I trust if I buy Ron LeGrand's system, I'm going to trust Ron LeGrand, go do what he says to do until I've done it enough times. And I'm like, I could tweak this point, or I could change this point, or I can make this point easier. And that's what I've done in my career is I've used so many coaching programs that I've taken the best of the best out of all of them. And that's what we operate off of today.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I see one other thing too. I don't know if this is anything different for you, but just in the last day or two, if they're talking to you, certain deals came up that one of the students said, "Oh, you can't do that," or somebody says, "Oh, you can't do that." I saw it myself. I answered, "Yes, you can do that." So the difference there is when somebody gets a barrier,
yeah,
and they say, "Oh, I can't do that," or like, "Well, I couldn't find my damn Insta start for my machine the other day. Hadn't used it for months. I needed to spray some stuff, and I knew I bought a new can. Couldn't find it. I was going to go buy another. So, damn it, it's here somewhere, and it fell behind some old table in the shed, But damn it, I found it, and I got the machine going.
You trusted yourself.
I trusted myself, and the thing is, when you have a problem, there's an answer. You don't say can't do it.
Right.
That's the difference with successful people. Not like,
well, that's cage thinking.
Yeah.
Cage,
you're stuck in a cage.
You're stuck in your cage, and you're not willing to. That's my biggest job as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
You're standing in the middle of the circus, the ring in the circus, and that's all you see is that ring, or from your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So my job is, well, did you think of it this way, Peter? And did you think of it that way? So I get you to think of it other ways. And then you, in your own terms, come to the conclusion based on your own, which is how I do all of my deals.
Yeah.
As I'll say to the customer, did you think of this? And did you know that? And you get them to look at it and answer their own questions, and it becomes real.
Yeah, but back up a step. You're the one who's thinking of the possibilities instead of, I guess I can't do it. You're not giving up. I had a very good friend, a friend of both of ours, who would work with people, and they say, "Well, I can't because," and she go, "Okay, well, how could you?" "Well, I don't know." Well, think about it. How could you? And they would come up with something. You've told me that you come up with a solution to a problem. It's kind of stinks. Well, I better not do that. And you think of a second solution. It's not so hot. You do the third, fourth, fifth, sixth. I've done it too. Like, I just keep going until I hit a solution that I think is actually good, not a crappy one.
Right.
So it's just a difference between, do you give up or just look for a solution? It's not that hard. It's like if you lose something in the house, you just give up or you keep looking for it. I lost my keys on my trip this summer. And I looked and when I left my resort room, I looked everywhere. I couldn't find them. And I went home. I saw the email from 2 months ago. "Hey, we found your keys that I totally missed." Like, yes, please send them back. Wow. You just don't give up.
Yeah.
Until you're dead. Just keep going. You'll find a solution. And I think that's one of the biggest differences with you. You'll know you can't find one.
Right.
And it may not be the first minute, the first day. Don't give up that easy. Look for it.
Yeah.
Winner mentality.
All right. So that's all good stuff. Let's go back to this trust thing, because here's how I want to end off the podcast. Okay.
Yep.
So politicians hide their beneficial interest.
Okay.
So I want you to understand this, because this is like none other. Nobody does this. So first thing I want to tell you is, because I figured out there's only 4 entities that can own a property.
Mm-hmm.
And we're taking in a subject to deal, which means we're taking over the person's mortgage and the deed is going in our name.
Yeah.
So there's this thing called a due on sale clause that everybody's worried about. So first of all, let's talk about the mechanics of that. The due on sale clause is there for a reason. And the reason is that when you get a loan from the bank, there's a thing called a note. And the note describes all the terms of the loan, like how much you're going to pay each month, how much is interest, how much is principal, like what day of the month. If you default, here's what's going to happen. Where do you send the checks? It's like all the nuances of the loan. The note is.
Right.
So it describes all the do's and the don'ts of borrowing that money.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, every single note is as useless as toilet paper. Because if you don't execute, or if you lend the money and I give you a note, or you give me a note, I lend you money and you give me a note in return, if you don't execute, if you don't pay me, I got to take you to court. I got to chase you. You're in the power position. You're in the driver's position because you didn't pay me, and I have to go now chase you with attorneys and lawsuits and all kinds of stuff. It's like a pain in the ass. It's like is useless. You could duck me for 10 years and not pay me.
Yep.
So there's this thing that's called a mortgage. So what happens is the mortgage connects the note to the property, so there's collateral.
That's so funny because people think the mortgage is the loan.
Yeah.
It really isn't, strictly speaking.
The note is the loan, and the mortgage is the bridge or the thing that connects the collateral to the note. So if you don't pay on the note, you can execute the mortgage documents to get the collateral back.
Get the house.
Right, which is the collateral. In real estate, we use the collateral. In a car, if you have a car loan, the car is the collateral.
Sure.
Right. In real estate, the house or the property is the collateral. So if I don't pay, you can go foreclose. Foreclosure proceedings are the court's way of getting the collateral back for the lender.
Yeah.
Legally, without them stealing it. Because obviously, if we didn't have foreclosure and I lent you $100,000 and you paid me on the 11th instead of the 10th, I could foreclose on you and steal your property. Because it's got a lot of equity in it, because it's worth 200 and I only lended 100. So it keeps the dishonest lenders honest, because they have to go to court to sue, and there's a lot of human rights and civil rights in there, so you can't steal my property. Okay. Now, when we do subject to deals, what happens is when you change deeds from one person's name to another person's name, it jeopardizes the collateral for the loan.
That's right.
Because now you no longer have the deed in your name and you signed the note, right? So when you sign the note, remember the note, you signed the note, not the mortgage. You also signed a mortgage. So when you sign the note and the mortgage, you collateralize the property. Now, remember what we talked about, was it this podcast or the last podcast? We talked about being on title. So you had the rights to sign that note because you own the property.
Yeah.
Well, when you pass me the deed, you no longer own the property, so the collateral is in jeopardy.
That's right.
So the bank is going to trigger a due on sale clause because of the collateral removation, or removing the collateral from them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why most subject to deals don't get called. The due on sale clause doesn't get called, because as long as you keep paying them, they won't know or wonder who owns the collateral. They'll keep assuming you own the collateral, because they're not going to go check the deed. Once they do a closing, the banks don't go back and check the deed until there's a foreclosure proceeding. Then they do a title search and they check the deed.
Yeah. And they don't want the house. They want the payments every month. That's what they really want.
So what we do is we take the deed out of your name and put it in a trust, so it looks like it's estate planning, and it doesn't trigger the due on sale clause. Now, here's what happens. Here's where I'm different than most with this stuff, and then we're going to end off after this. Where I'm different is you do a closing, a subject to closing with a closing agent or an attorney. So you take the deed from the owner's name and put it into a trust. That's how you do the closing. So now there's a settlement statement, or a HUD-1, whichever way you call it. There's a settlement statement. There's an actual closing, and the deed goes from your name to the trust. So there's all the closing documents of a closing. Once the closing is done, you can assign the beneficial interest to whoever you want. And that's what makes me different than most. Pace Morby knows nothing about that. He's supposed to be the subject to guy. He is clueless about that. Right? So that's what makes me different. Now, that's one of my biggest secrets revealed. I shouldn't have just said that, but my point is that when you do these things, this is how you control everything and own nothing. Right? You control the entities and the trusts, but you don't really own them. Especially if I take the trust and put it into my LLC, I control the LLC. And if I do it one step further, if I have my trust controlling the shares of the LLC that control the trust, it's like so far removed, it's almost impossible to find me. Right? So that's how I stay away from lawsuit protection. First of all, I don't create lawsuits because I do things ethically. And I fix them before they get to that point, because I believe a good executive sees indicators very quick.
Right.
You know, like this week, our income was down $10, and I think, well, no big deal. You know, and then next week it's down $20, and then next thing you know, 2 months from now, there's no money in the checkbook. Well, I should have fixed it the first time I noticed it was down $10. That was an indicator. That was something that happened that said, hey, you better go look at this. So I look at the indicators. You know, if somebody's indicators, you know, like a person's indicators are bad, they have bad indicators, I want to fix them right away. Like, I noticed you were like a little bit blah, blah, blah in your text to me. Is there something wrong?
Right. And
so
most people won't want to confront that. They want to hope it
Right.
goes away. You just left something sitting there.
I don't like to ignore it. What I like to do is hit them because when they're that early, they're easy to fix. If you ignore them and let them get big, they're harder to fix.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because the emotion sets in. So I don't have legal problems just for that reason, because I like to fix things early. But that's not, everybody doesn't do that, like you said. So if you're worried about legal protection, the best thing to do is everything we talked about on this podcast. And my profound statement and the description is how this could change your life if you fully follow this through, especially if you go into the link, because I have a whole package where you could buy all this training. You know, it's one video that's, you know, a few hours long, and I got all the documents and everything there. I mean, you could change your life with this. I mean, Peter, I went my first 18 months in real estate, and I don't even remember, on 20 something houses. We had I had 2.7 million or something like that in real estate value without never going to the bank or getting a loan. All I did was subject to deals. I didn't do anything. If you didn't agree to my subject to deals, I didn't know about the other 6 types of offers that I have now.
Yeah.
You know, so I was buzzing through all these houses like, oh, well, what are you, nuts? I would never do that. See you later.
Yeah.
I would leave the house. I gave up millions of dollars not knowing my other strategies. Millions and millions of dollars not knowing the things that we teach on this podcast.
Crazy.
All right, good.
And people do that. They're looking for their one deal that they can think through. Like, I'll do wholesales, or I'll do, well, I hate to tell you, but if the seller doesn't want to do wholesales, what are you going to do? Why don't you find out what'll work for him? And that's why
my first house, to your point, my first house I bought subject to, which is usually what happens. I know some of my coaching clients, whatever deal they do first is what they become good at, right?
Yeah, you learn one thing, you got one, you know.
But my first house I bought subject to from a couple of kids, and I was going to sell it on a rent to own, and I took a spare piece of plywood that I found in the construction job, and I nailed it to a tree and spray painted house for sale, no bank qualifying. And a realtor called me and said, "Will you do a co-broke fee?" I didn't even know what that was, so I paid her 2.5%. I made $68,000 off that house. Real money.
Too shabby.
Total profit. I had a partner. I just split it with him, but we made $68,000, and it was not even. And I think back at it now, I thought who I was. Oh, I'm God gifted. Oh my God, I made $68,000. You know, and I look back at it, I could have made $168,000 if I knew now what I knew then. But that's how you learn. You know, again, I manage the out points. I manage the things that don't go well instead of the things that do go well, and it gives me. It doesn't clutter up my brain that way. You know, it doesn't clutter up my thinking. It's like I just pay attention to the things that didn't go right and let the things that do go right. You know, it's like your car. You're driving down the road and the brakes, the brakes are making a noise. Well, you're not thinking about the gas tank, are you? No, you're thinking about the brakes.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about the air conditioning, are you? No, you're thinking about the brakes.
Yeah.
It's the same type of a thing. So, all right, Peter. So make sure we're going to get out of here. Make sure if you're listening to us, you go in the chat, you get the link because there's a lot of goodies in there. not in the chat, in the description. Realize that most Thursdays, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we record this and we live stream it to YouTube or Facebook. If you go to YouTube and Facebook, we have a lot of videos there. They're the same videos depending on what platform. If you go to YouTube, they're the same as Facebook or vice versa. And if you need help, go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. Top right-hand side is there's a support ticket. Just click that ticket. I answer all them myself, especially with the deal structuring. I love answering those. And if you wanna get involved with our new mastery class, there's a new mastery class that is a three video masterclass, which is free. Go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/masterclass, and you can get those. It talks about there's three videos. One video is about emerging markets. Another one is how to do virtual deals. And the third one is the system that we use to actually do our deals. And they're all free. They're about 30 minutes each. Okay? So, Peter, once again, thanks for being with me. And we're going to move on to the next podcast. Adios.